I love it that we clap for scripture here. Christ is risen.
Christ is risen.
Christ is risen.
Christ is risen.
Last Sunday we celebrated resurrection here at Recovery Church, in case you missed it. But the truth of the matter is we celebrate resurrection every week. And this week I've been struck several times by how much we celebrate resurrection all through the week, not just on Sundays. I know many experience that when they come to meetings here or when they're here for other events. I experienced it this week. Bill's family had a 2-day vigil with his sister that was holy, holy ground. And we celebrated resurrection there. And then Friday night, this incredible party you all threw. And it was so sweet. And for me, my book became our book. So this is our story, and we celebrate resurrection every time we gather. So I wanted to point out a few things about the scripture we had today, because this is a story about resurrection. I'm going to try to kind of cut to the chase. This story, when we plan worship, this is the other thing. I want you to know that worship is a finely tuned instrument around here. And as we're planning, we actually do worry about time, and we look at time. And so last week, we cut out the announcements and the hugs at the beginning. And boy, did we get some feedback about not having those hugs. So I'm aware that everybody experiences resurrection at different points in the service or finds hope at different points. And so when we think about what can we cut, what can't we cut, there's really nothing. We can cut the sermon usually, but there's really nothing else we can cut. I mean, by this point, we've had the sermon, right? No. Did you hear Damien?
Yes.
You know, so this week, know that after the service you can give extra hugs. Because for many of us, those hugs, and that connects with the scripture text we just heard, because this is the time in which Jesus appears to the disciples after he has died. They are, except for Thomas, they're locked in a room because they're afraid. And let's clarify this. It says, for fear of the Jews. Well, they were all Jews, okay? So this has been used as an anti-Semitic statement, but they were locked in the room because they weren't afraid of the Romans. They were afraid of the Jewish authorities, the religious authorities. And they were afraid that since they had followed Jesus, they too might be facing what he faced. So Jesus appears to them, and he breathes on them, and he says, "My peace I give you. My peace I give you." Now, if you've come back from the dead, breathing is a pretty sure sign that you're alive. And he breathes on them and gives them his peace. Do you know that that's what we do every Sunday morning? That's why those hugs are so important. That's when we give each other the peace of Christ. Now, in some churches, have you been to other churches who give the peace of Christ? And sometimes they'll turn to one person and say peace of Christ, or they'll turn to another person. Here, it's a storm. And it's a wonderful storm of love. I used to be in a church where there were two elderly sisters who just didn't approve of it. So when we give the peace of Christ, they'd just step out the back door and then they'd step back in again, and it was all but I know they got it too. At any rate, Jesus gives his peace, he breathes on them, and then he gives them this audacious power. He says, if you forgive anybody, they'll be forgiven. He gives them the power to forgive. So think about this. Peace, forgiveness. Those of you who follow a program may think of it as serenity and making amends. These are the gifts that he brings. Now I'll find where I could have been if I had been looking at my notes. Peace and purpose are a lot like serenity and service. Having had a spiritual awakening, these disciples were ready to carry these steps to others and practice what Jesus had shown in all their affairs. They were sent out to live in a different way. Is this the end of the story? Are they ready to go now? Well, it might have been, but this is just about the time that Thomas shows up. Have any of you ever been late to the party? The other disciples tell him what they have seen, only to find that he is just like the rest of them. He won't believe it until he sees it with his own eyes. Let me emphasize that Thomas was no different from the others. He was just late. When the women had returned from the empty tomb, the other disciples did not believe them. They had to see it with their own eyes. And Thomas was the same. Thomas went so far as to say he wouldn't believe it unless he put his fingers in the wounds in Jesus' side. At this point, Jesus must have just been shaking his head. And he did wait a whole week to show up again. But when he did, he went right up to Thomas and said, "Put your finger in my side." Thomas wanted proof, but Jesus gave him presence. He gets the presence of a Lord who shows up in life with wounds. And he appears not only in Thomas's life, but in yours and mine as well. Perhaps he carries these wounds as a reminder that he has not given up the whole mess of suffering, or to show his deep understanding of human anguish, or to offer strength when we are not sure where to turn with our hurts. Do you know what the American Sign Language symbol for Jesus is? It is putting a finger in one hand and putting a finger in the other. Touching the wounds. He gives Thomas what Thomas needs. Thomas has said, "I need to see you." He gives this to Thomas. And he says, "Blessed are you who see and believe, but even more blessed are those who believe without seeing." He knew that most of us would only ever see him through a bunch of imperfect people giving us big old hugs on Sunday morning, or listening to our stories without judgment at a meeting, or forgiving us when we have forgotten how to even ask, or simply showing up in the broken bread. Thanks be to God.